Hello and welcome back. You've completed your first and second visit, and I wanted to review all the things that we've talked about so far. In the first visit, the things we covered were things such as the philosophy of health and healing for your pet. So it's my philosophy that dogs, cats, animals, they're all created and designed to be healthy. They're all striving to be healthy. And that force that's working to create balance in their body is called the innate intelligence. That's that thing that they are born with, the wisdom that they're born with. And that innate intelligence travels, in one way, through the spinal cord. It's sending messages from the brain to the body, and the spine itself is protecting the spinal cord. So animal chiropractic looks for restoring those messages or the nerve flow to improve health. And it does that by looking at the fixations, or in chiropractic what we like to refer to as the subluxation, the fixation of joints of the spine that are pinching the nerve. So we covered some of those days that I wanted you to pay attention to after the first adjustment. This was referred to as the healing pattern. Sometimes we will see this again after a second adjustment, sometimes a third. Those are pretty rare, but it's still good to be aware of it. So on days 1 and 2 after an adjustment, there may be some soreness, there may be some fatigue, they may want to just rest. That's all very normal. Usually by day 3, 4, the energy picks up, and then on the 5th or 6th day is when we might see like a little bit of reduction in energy. After the second and third visits, the subsequent visits, usually that energy picks up and sort of stays around that same level. So what are some of the factors of healing? Genetics. Although we know that that genes are really important, we used to believe that as physicians and scientists, we used to believe that the gene is that piece that's going to be your destiny. It's going to say, yes, if your dog has this gene, it's going to have this problem. And what we now understand is that that's not the case. The gene, just because your dog has a certain gene for a condition, it doesn't mean that they're going to have it. There needs to be some kind of external factor or trigger to make it happen. Age is very important. Obviously, the older your pet, the longer it can take for healing. The length of the condition. So if they've had this problem for a number of years, then it's going to take a little bit longer. And this is because of the metabolism of your animal. It's different than in humans. In humans, we might see, say, 5 years may go by before we see any kind of degeneration. In a dog or a cat, it's only about a year. So after a year, we can already start seeing changes in their bodies if that condition has been there for that period of time. Types of conditions. So in this situation, if it's something like a musculoskeletal problem, those tend to recover faster than, say, something that's an organ-related condition. So urinary incontinence usually takes a little bit longer to recover than a real simple musculoskeletal condition. Underlying conditions, hormonal problems is a good example, where I find that a lot of dogs, if they have like any kind of imbalance in their hormonal system, then the recovery rate tends to be a little slower. And then the secondary spinal condition that I've covered with you is degenerative disc disease, or degenerative disc joint conditions, symptoms. So in this case, if there is already a lot of degeneration in their spine, like I said, the healing is going to take a little bit longer, and sometimes it also means that we're only going to reach a certain level of improvement. And even still, and for me, that's very acceptable, because if we can improve the quality of life even 10-20%, I think that's worth it. I think it's great. So and then of course there's always certain cases in all of this that don't improve at all. Chiropractic doesn't work for all animals, but in a lot of conditions we can see a great amount of improvement. And then of course time. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. So let's go into reviewing stretches. I wanted to remind you to avoid pulling. Dogs, cats don't like their feet pulled. And so if you're feeling like they're resisting, sometimes it's coming from the supporting hand that's supposed to be supporting is actually pulling. And so you want to be pushing rather than pulling. And we'll review this really as many times as it takes so that you feel comfortable doing it. Also, it's best done when they're laying on their side. But some dogs, obviously, they won't have it. So you do the best you can and do it while they're standing. But remember, it's all about developing the confidence. You got to practice, practice, practice. You just got to keep doing it. If you're ever in doubt, obviously stop and then let me know and we'll review it. Active care. So the active care is what we're referring to in those initial first few visits. Generally speaking, on average, an active care plan will be about 4 weeks. I would say, 70% of the time in 4 weeks, we can see a really nice change happening, in which case then we can begin to reduce the number of visits that are so close together, work our way towards a wellness care plan. But to understand why it takes some time is because your pet's body has a form of amnesia. If they've had this condition for some time, the body forgets. So even though it's by design that they're supposed to be healthy, the body does forget. We need to help remind it, and so there's this muscle memory that can get trained into their bodies that we sort of have to detrain, and then remind it, hey, we want you to be in this position. Scar tissue is a major factor here. As we're making adjustments, scar tissue gets broken up, and it has a tendency to want to tighten back down. 7 to 14 days is all it takes for a joint that's immobilized for scar tissue to form. And if there is pinching of the nerve, then we need to give the nerve some time to heal. And of course, that takes time. The frequency and duration of the care plan is going to, again, vary from all the factors that I mentioned before. Generally speaking, about 4 to 5 visits, we should see a change. If we don't, then we may need a little more time, or we may have to add a different kind of modality to help with that healing process. So in other words, joints are moving, they're getting back into place, but that nerve's not quite healing. So I might recommend something like acupuncture or laser to help to stimulate that nerve regeneration, or sometimes even a supplement. And then in very few cases, chiropractic just doesn't work. Maybe we caught it too late, or maybe there's so many factors in healing that are involved that we're just not going to get a response. That's pretty rare, though. Once we get into wellness care, otherwise known as maintenance care, what we're going to be dealing with is the idea that your pet, because of any kind of accident or injury that's occurred, it tears the tissue that's around each of those joints, and it leads to scar tissue. So that joint is never exactly the same. It's what we refer to as wound healing. True healing would be there's an injury, the tissue repairs, and it goes back to exactly what it was before. That doesn't happen very often. And so because you've got the scar tissue, then you have a point of instability or weakness in that joint. And that can then lead to the necessity of those regular maintenance visits to ensure that those joints are mobile and they're properly aligned. So if at any time you see something come up, you want to make sure that we take care of that sooner rather than later. The primary condition that we're looking at is the subluxation. That's that fixation that I was referring to. And the reason why we want to take care of that, especially during wellness care, is because if we don't, the fixation will lead to degeneration. And of course, wellness care helps to slow down the process. So even if there is degeneration, we don't want to just let it go and run its course and get worse. We really want to try to slow that down. If we can even stop it, that would be great to improve their quality of life. And then, of course, depending on the condition and age, it's going to vary. But generally speaking, what I find is most animals, dogs, cats, do pretty good on visits every 6 to 8 weeks for their wellness care. But again, we might sometimes have to modify that as they get older, or maybe you're taking them on longer walks. They're getting more and more stimulated, so they just need a little bit more care. So some home instructions. The main thing that I want you to do is to focus on doing the daily stretches. Again, if you have any trouble with that, let me know. We will review it. But I also want you to start considering where there may be some gaps in your pet's wellness care, mental and emotional. Um, what's happening in the house? Are there any? Is there anybody there that's really stressed out? Because that does affect your animal, your pet, and they are going to reflect whatever is going on in their environment. The other thing is diet. There's many different ways to approach this. Generally speaking, I really like to try to find whole foods, natural foods. Raw is really great if your dog can handle it, or your cat can handle it. Some cannot, but generally speaking, the more natural you move towards, the better sourcing you can move to, the better your pet's going to be. Wellness care is all those modalities that you can include into your pet's lifestyle. So your chiropractic care, massage, laser, acupuncture, herbal remedies, supplements, and then of course exercise, ensuring that they are moving daily as much as they can. If I've given you any special instructions on like particular ways that I want you to walk them, then you want to stay regular with that. So, wellness care, I just want to touch on this very quickly, is it's not merely the absence of illness, injury, or disease, which means it's not just about not being sick, because that's avoiding the negative. Wellness is about moving towards the positive, attempting to reach balance physically, mentally, and optimizing that the best you can. So, wellness is equals optimal health, better quality of life, better movement, appearance, and comfort. So, as we move through our visits, let me know if certain things are coming up, or if I notice some things that I think may help. This is what I like to call pet health hacks. I would like to share those with you. Sometimes it's talking about like a different harness system. I've had many owners bring in their dog with a harness that was actually creating more irritation, and was actually a cause of why they were having discomfort, and so we just changed those out. So, I want to make sure that we keep that conversation open. And then, of course, if you know someone who has a dog or cat who you think might benefit from chiropractic, please let them know about me. I offer a free 15-minute consultation. This is so that they can tell me what's happening, and I can talk to them about whether I think chiropractic will help them, because sometimes chiropractic isn't the right fit. So I want to lead them towards something that's really going to be helpful for them. But there's my number. You can text me, and then my website that you can find more about me and share that information. Thank you so much, and I look forward to our next visit.